All right, welcome everybody. We're going to be making our placard for our 3D printers right now. And this is a handy feature. So on this side is a slot that you can slide a print sample in. So you can see what your print's going to look like when you're done, which is kind of cool. And then over here is another slot that you can slide an information card in, just a piece of paper with all the temperature, type of plastic, all that important stuff about the printer. And we're going to do it a little differently. We're going to actually shift this label down below where the print sample is. And we're going to beef up some other stuff. So this was a model or a prototype I created to see what it felt and looked like. And I don't really quite like it, so we're going to switch it around a little bit. And then over here, we're going to actually, you can see the sides, a little triangle. And then on the back, you can see there's actually a back piece as well. So it's really 4 pieces, a face piece, a back piece, and 2 side pieces. And the face piece is actually in 3 different layers. So we'll have to build up all 3 of those layers with all the different structure inside of them. All right, so let's get down to it. We're going to create well, first of all, let's save our document so we know what we're doing later. So 3D printer placard, and you can call it a sign or whatever you want to call it. If you don't like that word placard, I need to spell it correctly. And I saved mine in 3D printer enclosure. You can save yours wherever you'd like. Click save. Everything is good. So 3D printer placard. All right. First thing we're going to do is we're going to model the face, and we're going to model it from the base up each layer of plywood. Yeah, I think that's smart. And then, yeah, let's just get started. One thing we notice, we want to model our first one at an angle here. So let's learn how to do that. So if I click create a sketch, I don't want to create a sketch on any of these faces because my face, the face of it is at a weird angle. So instead of just clicking on one of these flat ones, I'm going to say come here and go to construct and do plane at angle. It's going to ask me for a line that I want to base the plane on, and I can rotate from that line. So I'm going to choose this red line that's going to be like for the front. And then I'm going to rotate it back until I get to 40 degrees. And you can see from the side now that I've rotated it. You can rotate this plane, this new construction plane, at all these angles. I want it at 40 degrees. I'm going to click OK. Now I'm going to go back to my sort of home view, and then I'm going to create a sketch on this plane. So now my sketch is tipped up 40 degrees, which is what I wanted. First thing to do is to set a rectangle. So I'm just going to come down here to where I get a corner that's on the red axis. And I'm going to make this 10 by 25 centimeters. I don't know if I did that right. 25 centimeters. Let's zoom out and make sure. Yeah, so that's perfect. I'm going to hit enter and I get a rectangle. Now notice all the lines of the rectangle are blue, which means they're not constrained because I didn't tell it where to start. This whole thing can get shifted around all over the place. So to prevent that from happening, I'm going to grab my midpoint tool. I'm going to say, hey, take the midpoint of this line and line it up with this origin right here. That put the origin this. Now it's all fixed in space. It can't move around. So I'm ready to go. My next step is I need to extrude this out to the one thickness of my plywood. To know how thick my plywood is, I like to grab several sheets like this and clamp them together tightly with a clamp. Then I can turn on my calipers, make sure it reads 0, and then measure the thickness of all those pieces right by that clamp. And I'm getting 16.46. Now, something you have to keep in mind is that's measuring in millimeters, and right now I'm in centimeters. So I'm going to come down here and create, modify, change parameters, add a user parameter, and we're going to call this thickness. And we're going to use that number. So we had 16.46, but we want this to be, well, we can just cheat and do millimeters, I guess. Let's try that. 16.46. Now that's not the thickness of one plywood, that's the thickness of 6 of them. I put 6 together. So I'm going to just divide that by 6. And that'll give me an average thickness of 2.743 millimeters. So I'm going to say, okay. And I'm going to say, okay. Now I can extrude this. So I hit E and for extrude. And then so instead of typing in that hard to remember number, 2 point whatever it was, I can just type in TH, hit enter, and it's going to put that thickness in there for me. I hit enter again, and it's all good. So now when I look at it from the side, I see I've got a sheet of plywood, a piece of plywood that's the right thickness and the right dimensions. That's base layer one. Awesome. Now we need to build in the next layer into it. So what I'm going to do with that is I'm actually going to extrude out a second layer of plywood all across that face and then cut in some smaller pieces. So I'm going to create a sketch here, and I'm going to just take the whole rectangle. Actually, I can extrude right away. I don't need to create a rectangle. And I'm just going to do one thickness. Make sure it's coming out towards me. Enter and enter. Now I have two thicknesses thick. And you might be asking, why didn't you do that to begin with? Because I wanted to show you that it was like we were doing two separate things. You could have done two thicknesses to start with. All right. Now I'm going to need to cut away holes for that second layer for those slots. So I'm just going to click on sketch onto the front face layer. And I'm just going to place a rectangle. But I want to make sure the rectangle is even with the top here. But I don't care how wide or how big it is. I'm going to put another one in as well. So the first one was for the print sample. The second one is for the placard name. Now I need to dimension things and place them. So on this one, I know I want to put this one here to here. I want this to be 0.8 centimeters because I want the next layer to be 1.0 centimeters, so a little wider so it can overlap the print sample and hold it in place. So that one's 0.8. And then I need this side right here to be slightly longer than the print sample so it can slide in nicely. So I'm going to call this is going to be 6 centimeters. So I'm going to put that there and say, okay, that should be 6 centimeters. And then I also want this side of the rectangle to be 6 centimeters because the print sample is a square. So those two are 6. That's where the print sample is going to slide into. Notice we left a little space down here. This is where we're going to write printer number 1 or 2 or whatever it is. All right. Next thing to do is position this other rectangle. So I'm going to grab here and to here and say the distance between these two needs to be 0.6. And I would have made it 0.8, except there needs to be an overlap on this side and an overlap on this side to hold them both in place. And I want it to be 1 centimeter. So 0.2 on each side leaves 0.6 in the middle. So that's the reason for that. Now down here at the bottom, I want this to be that 0.8 away. So 0.8 away from the edge. So there's still a little overlap. And the same thing on this side. 0.8. Enter. So what I'll end up having is a 1 centimeter band of wood going around it. And that should look pretty sharp when it's all done. All right, so from there, what I need to do is I need to extrude down, because right now I'm at two thicknesses. I need to extrude this and this rectangle down and get rid of that material. So I'm going to hit extrude, and I'm going to click here and here, and I'm going to call this, if I do thickness, notice how it extruded up at me. I actually want to call this negative thickness instead, because all negative means is go the other direction. So instead of coming out, go in. And then that looks great. And I'm going to say cut and then say okay. So now I've got the slots built. So that's layer 2. Now I just need layer 3, which is that 1 centimeter band. Notice how this one goes all the way out to the top and free. And on this side, there is a little bar there. So we're going to make this bar thicker, but it's still there. All right, so I think I'll do the same thing as before. I'm just going to grab my top face here, create a sketch on my top face, except this time I'm going to just draw a rectangle across the whole thing. And I'm going to extrude out everything. So all that face, I'm going to extrude it out a thickness. And then click OK. Now I've just covered up, the slots are still there. You can see those 2 slots are still there. I just need to cut the holes in them now. So I'm going to come back to this face and create a new sketch on it. And this time I'm going to create a rectangle that's even with the top. And again, I don't care how big it is right now. I'll position it later. And then I need to do another one over here, but this one's not even with the top because I want that band. So I want it to be in the middle somewhere. And again, I'll position in just a second. I'll use the dimensioning tool. And you'll remember before we made this size 0.8. But we want it to be a little bit wider. This is where we're going to do the 1.0 on this one. And now this one needs to be a little bit short. So from this line to this one needs to be 0.2 short of what the hole was because we want a little 0.2 overlap here. We made this whole thing 6 before, so now we need to make it 5.8. So now it's going to be a little bit smaller. And then this one needs to be, let's think about this one. So from there to there needs to be 0.4 because there's 2 overlaps, I think. So 5.6. That makes sense. Oh, look, there's that one. Yep, that makes sense. Okay, so now we're just a little bit smaller, 0.2 for each side, and then 0.2 just for this one side. Yes, okay, that's all good. And now what we need to do is dimension this one. So this one to here, we made it 0.6, so there's 0.2 on either side, so it should be a 1.0 now. And we can check. There's like, you can see how I see the hole, the line for the hole underneath, and they're just a little bit on the inside. That's perfect. And then from here to the top, this one's going to be 1 centimeter all the way around. So 1 centimeter and then 1 centimeter and 1 centimeter. All right. So that was a little bit confusing. I think we nailed it now. Let's take a look at it. And now we just need to extrude, and we're going to cut out these 2 holes here. So extrude, and we're going to slice that hole, and we're going to slice that hole, and we're going to do again a negative thickness. That makes it go in instead of out. And we're going to click OK. Yeah, that feels pretty good. That feels pretty good. I can see, I'm just checking it out in there. Yep, I can see everything we needed to have working. The slot worked out great. All right. So that's the face. Thanks for watching this video. The video 2 will show you how to do the 2 sides and the base. And then this project is done.